What's happening, everybody? How y'all doing? Got an awesome guest in the one and only JP Bouvet today. Like most of you, I became aware of JP when I saw this skinny little white boy that won the Guitar Center drum-off and would then go on to win the national V-drum competition as well. And at the time, I thought for such a young player, he had a strong sense of narrative in his soloing and an interesting blend of dynamics and chops. And having met him and taken a lesson with him, I really can't say enough about how cool, insightful, articulate, and really wise beyond his years that young man is. To this day, he's the only drum lesson I've ever taken with someone who was actually younger than me. Which isn't really saying that much, because as I'm turning 42 this year, I suppose there are no shortage of drummers that are plenty younger than me. And that very thought was something I actually wanted to talk to him about in what I perceive to be the rapid development and heightened skill set of younger players that is evident in just how many younger players you see doing clinics, shredding online, etc. So we get into that, as well as the oftentimes silliness of modern art. Funny stories of playing with the uber shred-tastic axe slingers in Yngwie Malmsteen, Steve Vai, Zakk Wylde, Nuno Bettencourt, and Tosin Abasi in Generation Axe. Plus the concept of memorizing versus learning quote-unquote beautiful drum parts for last-minute gigs with animals as leaders in Periphery, prioritizing important information in the age of rapid information, practicing his ass off for the Guitar Center drum-off in the V-drum competition, and subsequent revelations about competitive drumming. Plus the artistic outlet that his band Childish Japes presents to everyone involved. And game reserve drum camps, Icelandic bike trips, my movie geekery, and a whole lot more. Shout out as always to my sponsor, New Orleans Record Press. Get some vinyl printed for your project already. Go over to NewOrleansRecordPress.com for competitive pricing, real-time quotes, color options, and all things vinyl related. Because vinyl sounds fucking good. That's why. All right, y'all. Here we go. A full-fledged near 90-minute geek out with a real badass in JP Bouvet. And in keeping true with my continuing mispronunciation of people's names, I give you JP Bouvet. See, I said it right that time. Not the first way I said it when we actually started the interview. Subscribe on iTunes podcast and give me a positive rating if you haven't already. Crash, bang, boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
All right, JP Bouvet. Jesus.
JP Bitty Baby. Hey.
JP Bouvet. Now, if you were from Southeast Louisiana, where I'm from, I think it would probably be Bouvet, but it sounds like you say more Bouvet.
No, you're actually wrong. Exactly wrong. I'd say Bouvet.
You do say Bouvet.
Yeah.
Oh,
I might kind of glaze over it sometimes, but yeah, I guess it's supposed to be Bouvet.
Bouvet. Okay. Mm-hmm. Is Jean-Pierre?
Yep.
Wow.
Perfect.
So clearly you're Russian, right?
Yes, very Russian.
You just have a French name.
Spanish, father's Russian. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
When we got relocated from the CIA, we all took French names.
Exactly. See, that makes sense. But you just gave it up, so now you're fucked.
Cover the trail.
Yeah, exactly. I'll edit that part out. Well, it's good talking to you, man. The good news is I'm here. The bad news is I nearly died, slipped, broke ankles, blew out my ACL, MCL, and got hit by a branch, and I'm soaking wet and freezing. Because for those of you listening to this, there's like a tornado bomb, sharknado, what do they call it? Storm bomb? What do they call this shit? It's like a blizzard with shit tons of wet, shitty snow.
Yeah, that sums it up pretty well. There's probably an acronym for it, but that sounds good.
I think they call it's like a bomb cyclone. There it is.
Damn. I have no idea. I don't have a TV, so I just look at my iPhone app and it says snow all day.
Oh,
and I'm like, what? It's spring. And I just roll with it.
Exactly. So there's a bomb cyclone sharknado that's going on right now, and it's shitty and wet and hazardous to one's health. Speaking of Sharknado, did you realize? Have you seen Sharknado the movie by any chance?
I haven't. I've just heard the legend. Really,
Well, apparently one was so good that it warranted a total of 5. I thought it was a trilogy, but I looked it up today, and apparently there's a 5. I guess the 5th one hasn't come out yet, but wow.
They're still making them.
They're still making them.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
one wasn't enough.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and if you're really getting weird, if you want to just watch ridiculous movies with ridiculous names, there's also Zombievers. You can check that out if you want to on Netflix. So
I'm sensing a movie buff. Not sure.
yeah, and actually when you said Jean-Pierre, I was like, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, one of my favorite directors. Oh, shit. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess I nerd out on movies a little bit too much.
Nice.
But speaking of names, I recently did my DNA test. Have you done one of those
I
yet?
haven't, but I really want to.
Okay.
My dad said he was going to get that for us for Christmas, and he didn't.
Bad move, Dad.
I know. Dad, if you're listening,
Yeah.
I'm disappointed.
Yeah, as you should be.
Because I have no idea what my heritage is with his name, and I'm still trying to figure it out.
Right. Well, I knew that I had Spanish and French, not so uncommon from Southeast Louisiana. But I also had 22% Scotch-Irish. Once again, not a surprise. I had 3% Native American, and so immediately I was like, I'm getting a motherfucking casino.
Nice.
And then I realized, no, that's not enough of a percentage.
Not enough, huh?
It's got to be like 1/16, so I guess that would be like 6 and change.
Ugh.
So I need twice the amount of Native American.
If your wife was the same, can you add it up?
You know, that's an interesting... Well, my kid, I suppose, could potentially be collectively more
if you
than
have enough
6%.
kids, it'll equal 6% as a family.
Right. Just a collective DNA sample?
Yeah. I'm not sure, but I think you'd need at least two kids. Yeah, you'd need 2 kids, and you'd be there.
Yeah. That sounds about right, man.
I just had one, and
Right.
I'm sure it was painless. So
Yeah, for me, I've even been sleeping. It's been great.
amazing.
I was realizing the first time that I saw you live or in a live setting of some kind was when you just sat in on someone else's clinic, and that someone else was Matt Garska, and that was, I don't know how long ago, maybe 5 years.
Right.
And it was a clinic at, I think, the Guitar Center on like the west side.
Exactly.
And you
Sam
sat
Ash
in.
on West Side.
Oh, it was Sam Ash Guitar Center. Home Depot, Lowe's.
It's all good.
Yeah. But yeah, you sat in on that, and that was crazy. I remember thinking, what's up with this kid's pants?
Right.
You had a very bizarre set of pants. Or
Yeah,
just pair.
that's how you know it was a few years ago. I've since retired most of the pants.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd say this is probably a wise choice. Everybody
I think
goes
so.
through strange phases.
You grow out of it.
Yeah. It was interesting. Do you recall if you improvised that? Did you plan
pants?
much? Yeah, just the pants. We're not going to talk about drumming.
It's crazy. Just eyes closed, reach in the closet, see what happens, man.
And as for the drum solo that you played, was that mostly improvised? Do you remember?
I can't remember anything about it, but it definitely was, because I haven't planned a drum solo since the drum off, really. So.
Really?
Or at least, a really important film shoot like the Meinl video we did. I had a little plan for that, but no, not other than that.
That's amazing.
Pretty terrible place to try to make up a drum solo too, opening for the greatest drummer of our generation, Matt Garska. I mean, I don't know why at the time I thought that was even a fun idea, but
I thought it was bizarre.
in New York City, the city full of the best drummers in the world. So I regret that every day now.
Yeah, it was good. I remembered you did some really slow shuffly thing and then kind of escalated it, and I was like, I don't know if you said that or if I thought it or I've heard you say it elsewhere, but basically the idea was that if you start somewhere slow, you can increase and actually go somewhere. Whereas I just start out a drum solo, I shred, I'm dead within 25 seconds, and then it tanks.
Nice.
That's my style of drum solo.
Well, hey, I mean, if you've only got 16 bars to fill, that's the best way to do a drum solo.
Just go ape shit and shut it off.
Exactly.
That's amazing. Well, here's a question for you. 1, how long have you been in New York? And 2, why New York?
Okay, I've been here, I think, about 6 years now. And why New York? Actually, I was in Boston at Berklee College of Music.
Uh-huh.
And I was about to move into a new house with 3 of my friends. And then me and my girlfriend broke up, and she was one of those friends.
Oh, that's problematic.
That was going to be a problem. And she was like, so you can't live here anymore. This is like 2-3 weeks before we move in. It's like, great, okay. I had already dropped out of school at that point, and I had one friend who was moving to New York.
Really?
The venerable Chris Leon,
Okay.
mixing engineer extraordinaire. And yeah, I was just like, Chris, you're moving to New York, right? And we had actually like coincidentally kind of mused about living together because at that point we were both like totally just workaholics.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't it be great to just like live in the same house and never see each other and just work all day?
Yeah.
And know that the other person doesn't care.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we ended up living together for 1 year. in Long Island City. And then I moved over here in the place we're sitting in like 5 years ago. I haven't moved. I've had the same rehearsal space for the whole time, and life is good. I actually love New York. I'm one of the people that loves New York every day that I'm here.
Really?
Yeah.
But so 6 years in, I'm double that. This will be 13 for me, and I got to say it's waning a little bit.
Yeah?
Yeah, a little bit.
Is it the cost of the kid?
But it was prior to that. It was the overall cost, and then sometimes just dealing with weather. Man, I'm from the South. I'd rather just like hot humidity and that shit, and not like snow shitstorm Sharknado. Like
it amazes me how much that affects people because I'm from Minnesota,
right?
So it just doesn't like we have all the weather, so it doesn't register with me that could be like a real turnoff. But I have a lot of friends from warmer climates who just actually have to leave during winter or are just like notably more miserable for like 3 months.
Yeah.
And I find that amazing. You know, I've always kind of like held steadfast to like, I will never let the weather prevent me from enjoying my day.
Right.
But it's easy for me to say I grew up in like the worst possible thing.
Yeah. Well, what's amazing is that you came here, put your roots down. You've only moved, it sounds like, twice, but you've had the same practice space. Mm-hmm. In 12 years, I've moved to more places than the years that I've been here. Oof. So when I first moved, because
really?
I wasn't planning on, the plan was never to live in New York. In fact, hopefully statute of limitations took care of this, but so I moved in 2005 after Hurricane Katrina. I came up here, a girl that I was seeing, she lived in New York, and I was like, well, I got to get out of New Orleans. So a few days post-Katrina, I ended up coming up, and then long story short, I ended up staying. But about 5 years prior to that, I was hanging out with one of my buddies, and we were drinking on the streets, because in New Orleans, you could do that. Mm-hmm. So I was like, fuck it. Like, what are we going to get, like a ticket or something? Yeah. Sure enough, like these like Italian Brooklynite-like dudes came up and wrote us tickets.
Yeah.
And at the time when I got it, it was $10. And I was like, you could take that $10 ticket, shove it up your ass. Well, I'm never going to live in New York. Go fuck yourself.
And they're like, that's going to be a $50 ticket.
I don't know, man. I waited. I renewed my license in Louisiana, and finally I was like, I called in, and I just this year got like a New York license. So,
wow.
Yeah, I would just renew it because I was like, I'm not going to be able to do it because that stupid ass ticket that I got. But apparently, statute of limitations took care of it, or some asshole's going to hear this and do some digging and dig it back up on me, and I'm going to get arrested.
He happens to be a huge fan of mine. I've taught that guy. And I've gotten a ticket for the same thing, and it was the stupidest thing ever. It was like my second year here. I hadn't thought twice about whether or not I could drink on the street. Actually, that's how new to drinking I was.
Yeah.
Well, publicly, I should say.
Right.
After being of age.
Right.
And me and Ian Barnett, old Barnyard, Yarn Ball, we were, coming out of a show at like 1 a.m., grabbed a little beer out of this little corner store, and we were like, can we drink these on the street? And they're like, no. But you're probably fine. We're like, okay. And then we literally opened it. It was comic. We opened them.
That's how this happened to me.
30 seconds later, a cop drives by, and they stop and get out. And they're like, guys, you can't drink on the streets. We're like, oh, sorry. And they like give us tickets. It's $25 each. And then what I thought was hilarious was they didn't really care. They just had to do it.
Yeah.
And I walked over and like, begrudgingly put half a beer in the can. And he was like, oh, you didn't have to throw it away. I mean,
they made us throw ours out.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, you can finish it. It's like, but another patrol's going to come around the block and be like, it's another 25. But this is going to be the most expensive beer I've ever had at some point here.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm going to drop mine in the can, and it was still upright. And I was like, I might be able to drink this when they leave. I was just so pissed off. And I was like, once again, fuck that ticket. But apparently it didn't come back to haunt me. So knock on wood.
That's good.
I think I should be good. So you're going on, you said, what, 6-7 years now in New York?
6th year. Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. And what is it that you said that just continuously renews your interest in New York? What is it about New York that?
Well, it's kind of like what most people say, but I think it might be for a different reason. A lot of people love like the energy of the city. I think it like energizes them.
Yeah.
A lot of people say they love the hustle and the bustle, whatever. That part's all cool, but for me, it's not like I don't think I need that. It just is really just amazing to observe.
Yeah.
Like my favorite thing to do, mind you, listeners, we are in Queens right now, Sunnyside, Queens, which is like 20 minutes from Manhattan. Quiet little family neighborhood. Nothing cool. You'd never come here if you didn't live here or if you weren't interviewing me for a podcast.
Right.
One of my favorite things to do now, which sounds so lame, is just to be in Manhattan running an errand with no time frame.
Yeah.
Because, and especially like the past couple of years, like I've done a lot of meditation and mindfulness, and there's no better place to just be observing a cacophony of beautiful things than to be in Manhattan, just walking slowly, looking at beautiful architecture, people going about their day of all types from all over the world. And that's a big part of it. The other part of it is that it's really kind of a world of its own. Like, obviously tons of people visit here and tourists come through New York, and they absolutely should. But it's a little bit weird when someone comes and they're like, so this is what America's like. And you're like, well,
no.
I mean, this is what New York City is like. And honestly, there's a lot of amazing cities in the country. But New York's definitely a really specific beast. In Queens particularly, I love. I feel like this is where I fit in. I don't feel like there's really nothing cool in Queens.
Right.
And I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
Like, no one comes here.
Yeah.
There's no tourist attractions.
Right.
It's just people living, and it's fantastic. And if I'm remembering correctly, and if I trust the source that I can no longer remember, which I do, it said that Queens is the most culturally diverse city, if you consider it a city, in the world. And I do believe it whenever I get on the subway. I'm like, yeah, pretty much.
It is.
And it's this beautiful little example of coexistence. Like, everyone's got their pockets. People tend to self-segregate and find people that they like and speak the same language and whatever.
Sure.
But it is just the most beautiful place where, for the most part, people are getting along. At least where I live. If someone deeper Queens, again, I'm not a real New Yorker, so someone in deep Queens is like, this guy has no fucking idea what he's talking about. But at least my little slice of it here. Those are a couple of reasons I love it. Also, there's just so much going on, man. This is just the center of the art world and the music world in so many ways. And we like even the intellectual world, which I'm absolutely not a part of, not smart enough to be, but just to tag along, like we went to some event at the New York Public Library the other day, just some discussion about, politics, whatever. They have a bunch of these talks. And it's just so cool to just be able to, pay a couple bucks and show up and see some of the smartest people talk about some crazy shit that's going on. And just literally just for the sake of being enlightened and thinking like they do. So, bunch of reasons, but that's a few of them.
There's no shortage of inspiration in many avenues for sure, not the least of which is music, and I'm sure the arts. My mother was an artist, a visual artist, painter, etc. And I've just, from being dragged to those throughout my life, I've turned such a blind eye to the visual art world with all the seemingly, or at least to my mind, sort of the oh God, just the pontificating and just intellectualizing of it and the pompousness of it. Yeah, and I was thinking about it, I was like, well, why does that bother me so much and not music? And I was like, well, one of the things with music is that you kind of have to shut up and listen to it and we can talk about it afterwards. But it's one thing to be looking at it and just hearing this in your periphery, and my God, it's just nauseating for me. So I can look at art, but I don't necessarily want to go do it at art openings.
Oh yeah, no, I know what you mean. And this is totally maybe very irrelevant, but the visual art world, because I got really into painting. That was my favorite study in high school was art history. I became a painter for 1 month and quit, retired.
It was a quick turnaround.
It was good. I made some good shit though, believe me. Really into like impressionism stuff, and now I'd make a trip to like PS1 MoMA in Queens, and just leave like that. None of that was art. That wasn't none of that.
Bullshit.
It was like, to me, there's just one requirement. There's literally just one, and it's that. And it's even this, like, it's hazy how I feel about this even, but I want there to be at least like some level of technical prowess.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And then some people kind of respond with like, well, a lot of modern art that's like way out, and just like a sheet hanging on a wall with a paragraph written next to it, is like, it's not the fact, they'll say like, it's not the fact that you couldn't do it, it's the fact that you didn't think to do it.
I'm calling bullshit on that every time I hear it.
Yeah, because like look at any painting. I didn't think to do any of them. It can be incredibly technically like just flooring.
Yeah.
Also, I wouldn't have thought to do it. You look at Salvador Dali or anyone like that.
Yeah,
It's a perfect example.
Yeah.
No one ever thought to do that shit, but it's still incredible craftsmanship at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Even just decent craftsmanship. That's good enough for me because I can't really tell the difference probably.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it so goes. Do you think that the way that you feel that way due in part to your technical pursuits in music and sort of how you recognize art, or at least in music sometimes, and what you appreciate certain aspects of it, and that you would kind of like to see that in the visual form as well? Or is that too far reaching?
I don't know if the thing is with music, I'm rarely exposed to what I would consider like the levels of abstractness that you'd find in modern visual art.
Oh, 110%.
You know what I mean? Like, and I guess that would be like, I can think of a couple examples.
Right.
Which I would never listen to, but I've never thought to think like that's not music or whatever. You know, sure it is.
Yeah.
I just don't like it. Just the same way that, you know, super fucking out art is art. I just don't want to see it. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's nothing in my, at least like somewhat regular listening wheelhouse that I'm like, that's total BS.
Yeah. Why consume your time with that? Life's too short. It's ridiculous.
Right.
And I feel the same way about going to see modern art most of the time.
Yeah.
It's kind of what we're talking about. You know? Also, let's admit it, there is a fine line between just maybe not being particularly good or able to execute maybe even what they want to do and just simply calling it art.
Right.
Which is part of the deal with modern art. It's like,
yeah.
you know, like a paper
You just need
bag.
another name for them. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I agree. That would be cool.
Maybe installment. Maybe they've already done it. It's called an installment. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some incredible installments though, but
Sure.
there needs to be another word that's like, this wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, necessarily what you might consider like any type of skill that was developed to
like a
execute
statement. It should just be called a statement.
It's a statement.
You know, read. You have to. They usually involve a lot of reading.
Yeah.
And sympathizing.
It's ambiguous enough, I think. Sure, that could be anything just like that. I mean, but if it's a paper bag in the middle of a white room, then I would say you can call it an installment, but I would feel better if the word bullshit was in front of it, and then it could just simply be a bullshit installment. We could all agree.
Well, your words, not mine. I'll call it a. I don't know what I'll call it. I just won't be there.
Exactly. You have gotten some last-minute calls to do quite a few gigs, a few of which would be, I guess, the Periphery gig, Animals as Leaders, and then ultimately with the Animals as Leaders thing, you ended up playing with, what, Generation Axe?
Right, and to be unconfusing to anyone, I never subbed for Animals as Leaders, technically.
Right.
It was straight to Generation X.
Oh, okay.
And Tosin happened to be a part of that.
Okay, so you would play
I've never been in
individual
Animals
tunes.
as Leaders.
Okay, right.
I don't know if I could hang in a full show, to be honest.
It would be crazy. I mean, the fact
yeah.
that you got through 4 songs in a short amount of time is still pretty impressive, man.
Well, thank you, and it was a lot of fun. And I've thought of, because after that I was like, you know, because I mean, Matt, I got called in because Matt at the time was hurting from the wrists.
Yeah.
Is now totally cool and better than ever. But it did cross my mind, like, if they needed me for a tour, like, could I do that? And I don't know the answer. I think I could. It would take more time than anyone might want to spend on it.
Yeah.
And I think it would be somewhat disappointing for the fans, but that would be just like us hobbling across the finish line if necessary. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah. But yes, I did sub for those gigs pretty last minute.
You made an interesting distinction in one of the videos, one of the million videos that you have online, where you said there's a difference between learning and memorizing. Mm-hmm. You had said that with the Animals as Leader stuff, maybe that's what it was pertaining to, that it was more memorization than learning, because it was something that not you hadn't necessarily not done it before. It was just a matter of memorizing once again. So for the people who haven't heard that, can you make that distinction again? Because I thought it was an interesting.
Totally. And it's funny. I was talking about this with a friend who was visiting yesterday. We spent a few hours drumming and talking about things, and that came up. And it's kind of just like the difference between, if you can think back to when you first, were a beginner drummer, or if you are a beginner drummer now. Sometimes someone shows you like a new combination or a thing that involves your kick drum when you're not used to it.
Sure.
That you've just never ever done.
Yeah.
And it requires you to like take it back to square one, look at the pattern, and like learn how to learn that coordination.
Yeah.
So
the mechanics.
That's learning. Exactly. The mechanics aren't there yet. As opposed to like granted there was some learning, but much of the Periphery and the Animals as Leader stuff for me I could play it.
Right.
Like give me 4 measures, and if I listen to it, I'm like, I can do that. The hardest part is gonna be like remembering what I'm supposed to do.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So that's really the difference. Is like taking things I already know that I could do, and putting them in the right order.
Yeah.
So it's not like it sounds like shit the first time I do it. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
Like, it's not like I sit down and just kill it, but that's kind of the difference. So and particularly with Garska, Garska again, in my opinion, is leading the charge in our generation, and it's just incredible and deserves every second of recognition because he's spent way more time practicing than anyone I know. And he spent time practicing smart. But we come from a similar way of thinking, at least. I mean, we never studied with the same people, but we think similarly. So when I play his parts, they feel really natural, and they come really naturally. And they make a lot of sense. And really, him and Halpern's parts are beautiful drum parts. I mean, it's not a word I had ever really described drumming with until I was really learning some of the Periphery parts, like note for note. And I was just like, this flows so easily. Like once you know what it's supposed to sound like, you'll almost do it by accident a lot of the times. Assuming, again, that you have learned at some point the vocabulary necessary. So that, it's half, props to those guys and half just a happy coincidence that I happen to think similarly to those guys. Because conversely, when I did the Generation X tour, I also had to learn, like, Steve Vai's music, Zakk Wylde. I mean, we would just kind of like jam out on some tunes, but those and those kind of Yngwie Malmsteen, those guys, believe it or not, like those were as hard, if not harder, for me to get right.
Really?
Really, just because I never, ever in my life got into classic rock. I never went there. It was never part of my upbringing. My parents didn't listen to it. Yeah. So that type of drumming, like the ideas themselves, are not readily available for me. Yeah. And when I do them, it feels forced and unnatural. Better now that we've done a couple tours, but especially in the beginning, I was like, wow, it's really hard to play Highway Star. You know what I mean? Like, I'll play a fill and it won't sound like a rock fill. Right. It'll sound like me doing a fill. Yeah.
Ian Pace is also a bad motherfucker from Deep Purple. I mean, he's killer.
And no, it's not a disrespect thing. It's like just coming from a different world. You know what I mean? Like what people are doing now. If you look at what Garska's doing, Halpern's doing, Benny Greb, like, I wouldn't say it's more impressive. It's a natural evolution. Yeah. But that style of drumming from classic rock was just it's a different thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Different set of chops.
Yeah. There's a lot of... I think what Mitch Mitchell was doing with Jimi Hendrix specifically, Ian Pace kind of loved that that kind of thing that he did. Ian also had crazy chops. I've talked with drummers about him because I'm a huge Deep Purple fan, but he was really kind of like the Buddy Rich of classic rock. He could shred solos. And I think a lot of those guys, because they were coming from jazz and blues, there's a little bit of a lineage that I hear from Mitch Mitchell to Ian Pace. And the drummer of Captain Beyond is a killer drummer as well. And there's a similarity with all those guys. But once again, I've immersed myself in it and I've been obsessed with classic rock because I was kind of raised on it. Yeah. So that vocabulary makes more sense to me than the more modern stuff that I feel like you and Matt would play.
Totally.
So I'm the flip side of it.
Yeah. And while we're talking about Ian Pace, can I share one story with you that is heartwarming for me?
Sure.
And it's actually comical because if you'd been like at the beginning of this interview, who does Ian Pace play for? I'd be like, or did he? Yeah. I don't know if they're still playing, but
he still does.
I would be like, I have no idea. Yeah. But he, like, that's the extent of which I know nothing about anything to do with that world.
That's hilarious.
And I've actually made an effort since Generation X, so that's where I'm at now still. Yeah. Much to the chagrin of many listeners here. Idiot! But one of the biggest compliments I've ever been given actually was from Yngwie Malmsteen, believe it or not.
Really?
And
who's a notorious hard ass.
Exactly, and the stories are true to form, and day after day he is shooting par for the course in that regard. I mean, he doesn't let down.
Really?
And so hopefully he doesn't listen to this ever. But so I got asked to do the tour, obviously, and it was in the middle of Generation X tour. So I showed up. And I was originally just supposed to do the Animals as Leaders song. So I had learned 4 songs.
Yep.
And I was like, sweet, let's do this. So, ironically, there was one show during the changeover where I played the Animals as Leaders songs.
Yeah.
And Garska played the rest of the set.
Oh, my God.
But anyway, so during sound check, which was forever, it was just like 5 hours of sound check because everyone had to come and they take their time and we're just kind of chilling and then we play.
Oh, God.
We would, I don't know if Yngwie even knew we were getting a new drummer, but Matt was, like, oh, JP's gonna try playing some of these songs. This is a long story, but after the sort of a debacle happened, I was only supposed to play 4 of the songs. There was another drummer coming in to play the other songs, so there were going to be 2 drummers to replace Garska. But then, long story short, that new drummer was like, for reasons that I shouldn't disclose here, he was like, fuck this, I'm out.
Yeah.
With blessings actually from everyone. Everyone was like, yeah, you're right later. He had shit going on at home and it was like a huge deal for him to come in the first place. And then he was like, you guys can figure this out. Bye.
Wow.
And so then it just like turned to me. Everyone just kind of turned to me and I was like, okay, I can learn the whole set. That's fine. So anyways, all that just to say, I finally sat in on like a sound check with Yngwie, and he literally, it was like, Matt was like, yeah, he's going to try playing the set. And he's like, right now? And he was like, yeah. And I sat down terrified, really. Yngwie was the person I was scaredest of, not because I've heard stories of his.
Oh, wow. See, I would have totally.
His
been
attitude.
Like, oh, Jesus.
It was really just because that music, like, that's even more foreign to me, right? So I've never listened to Yngwie Malmsteen in my life before that. And double bass, like triplets on, never have I done that in my life. I've played a bunch of double bass, but never just that thing over and over again. So I just didn't, I actually was like, I don't know if I can do this. Not even just period. I don't know if I can do this at all. So we got through it, and he was literally just kind of standing there looking at me while he's shredding, and I'm trying to play the songs. And then at the end, he's like, okay. But anyways, we finally get to, there was like another show Matt played, and I did another sound check to try and practice.
Yeah.
And then I played the next show, and Yngwie's show is like nearly running off the rails at every moment in an awesome way.
Right.
Like, that's how he lives his life that way on purpose.
Yeah.
It's just like, he's like, I've been doing this for forever. Yeah. And like, what keeps it exciting is that we are blazing. Like, we are fucking going for it. So it's all out every time, which is actually super fun. But after the first show, we somehow got through it like pretty good. And mind you, the whole thing is like catching cues through the fog and stuff. And, and it was nuts. And it's 40 minutes nonstop of just onslaught of and hits. And I played much worse versions of his show after the first show.
Really?
So the first show was just a stroke of luck. But after the show, I was on the bus, and at that point it was a U.S. tour, so the guitarist and the band were actually singing on the same bus, which was really fun. And he came on, and we hadn't like exchanged any words. I don't think he knew my name. I still don't know if he knows my name, actually. But he got on the bus, and he was like, hey, man, I've played with Ian Pace. He listed like 10 drummers I didn't know who I assumed were super famous. Yeah. And he was like, and that was fucking incredible. And I was like, oh, man, like, thanks. And Steve, I was sitting there, and Yngwie kind of like went about his business. And Steve was like, he was like, remember this day, JP. Yngwie doesn't give out compliments easily.
It's amazing.
And that was really one of the bigger compliments. And funny enough, the other biggest compliment that Yngwie has given me was on stage, one of the first shows. We finally like nailed this set of like a bunch of hits that just happened randomly by cue. He just goes, lifts his guitar, puts it down, and we hit hits. And we catch all this crazy stuff super fast. And like, we got it. And it like, you almost never get it, even 100 shows in. So you get it, And he like turned around. You can imagine him just kind of like turn around on stage like for like 1 second. And just like he went like, huh, and he kind of like smiled.
Really?
Almost like a wink.
Right.
And that was like, I was like, fuck yeah. So yeah, believe it or not, Yngwie Malmsteen giving me some of the biggest compliments I've ever received.
That's amazing. Of the shredders, who was the funniest guy? Because I feel like Zakk Wylde is
Definitely
a pretty funny guy.
Zakk Wylde.
He's always talking about, I don't know if you follow him on Instagram, but he's always talking about uterus deadlifts.
Yeah.
He loves saying uterus deadlifts.
He has like catchphrases, man, and these
For
ideas
everything.
that he's. Oh yeah, his whole like. So you read, if you follow him on Instagram, everyone listening, follow him on Instagram, and then read his captions,
They're hilarious.
and just know that that's just how he talks.
Right.
That's literally every second of his day is all metaphors and stories and crazy substitutes of words and uterus deadlifts and stuff. So he's brilliant. Super sweet guy.
Yeah.
Super sweet guy.
Yeah. That's crazy, man, playing with Steve Vai. I mean, what a maniac. I actually just broke out. Once again, I'll be talking more about classic rock that you probably don't know anything about. But the Eat 'Em and Smile record that he did with David Lee Roth when it was Greg Bissonette and Billy Sheehan on bass. So it was basically David Lee Roth had left Van Halen. He was like, I'm going to put a monster group together to follow up my departure from Van Halen. And I just listened to that record recently. And of course, Steve Vai is fucking shredding on it. And I mean, to do that, to do Zappa, to do his own solo thing, that's crazy that you played with that guy.
Yeah, Steve's a really special creature.
Oh, yeah.
He is super. He's as in touch and clever and caring as you'd kind of imagine.
Yeah. Who did you have the most what the fuck moments while they were soloing?
Honestly, it all kind of turns into a blur. No offense, guitar players everywhere, but
Shredsville.
like,
Every song.
I mean, to me, it's hard to say. They all do an amazing thing differently.
Yeah.
Just very different versions of something totally fucking insane.
Right.
So it's really hard to say because some of them I like, musically speak to me more. Some of them are just like athletically, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Whatever it is going on. So it's really hard to say. And I actually, in my mind, when you asked me that, went through all 5 of the guys and was like, that guy, no, that. So I think it's just,
Yeah.
it just depends, man.
A blur of shreds.
Oh my God, so much shred. I mean, with Zakk, we literally, Zakk, this is fitting for his character as well. Is like, we literally just play, we don't even play any of his songs. We literally just jam out like a Jimi Hendrix tune,
Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath, and Allman Brothers. None of which I knew that, I didn't know any of them.
Amazing.
When I walked in. And he's like, you know this song, right? And I was like, yeah, no, definitely not. And the bass player constantly makes fun of me for that shit. He's like, there was this guitarist once, JP, called Jimi Hendrix. And and I'm like, yeah, I know. 4 of his songs.
Right.
But he'll do, so, I mean, he has like a 45-minute set, and it's just 15-minute jams. 3
Wow.
15-minute jams. With like 2 minutes of the song, and then it's just a guitar solo.
Yeah.
For 12 minutes. And we're just rocking as hard as we can behind it. It's actually the point in the set that becomes extremely exhausting
I bet.
because it's nonstop. And it's
Yeah.
not fast, but you're hitting really hard. You
Yeah.
got to keep the energy up.
Sure.
And Zakk's like out there in the audience, standing on the bar, whatever like Zakk is doing. But
Yeah.
you just got to be in there.
That's amazing that you played with all these guitarists and within one show. That's wild.
Agreed.
Fuck, man. Well, going back to Matt Garska for a second, you had said that some of his stuff felt pretty natural to you. Both of y'all studied at Berkeley, right? Mm-hmm. Do the two of you share a mutual teacher that was influential, and is maybe that a point of connection, perhaps?
No, I think not. I actually don't think any teacher we shared
Interesting.
that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And I actually only studied with a couple drum teachers there at all. One for private lessons the entire time. A lot of people skip around, but I took with Casey Sherrill, brilliant guy, super nice guy. And he opened my eyes up to some things that became and are still key characteristics of my playing.
Oh, yeah?
And honestly, I don't think me and Matt thinking similarly really has anything to do with being at Berkeley.
Okay.
I mean, by osmosis, when you get dropped into the Berkeley zone, you encounter so many different styles, different backgrounds, different genres people are playing. So had I not gone there, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
had he not gone there, maybe he wouldn't. I can't speak for him. Maybe his playing would be different too.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to say where it comes from because it's really like the environment and the combination of, being. I mean, Garska particularly. He was in the metal ensemble. He was in the hip hop ensemble. He was in jazz stuff. He was really doing everything.
Yeah.
And I was doing that kind of spread, but not the same. I wasn't in the ensembles. I was just in projects and bands with people of various types. So it was that sort of mélange. Of
very French
stuff. It was just a huge mix of stuff, and that always kind of I felt like defined me a little bit, and I'd say him too, because that's I think why he has kind of changed the game in the genre that he's in is because he's not coming at it from a quote unquote metal background
Right.
at all. He's just coming from it at a drums as an extremely well-versed, diverse drummer background. Like one of them, arguably the most diverse drummers approach to it.
Yeah.
So he can pull from anything.
Right.
Should I stay uninvolved? Deny them when they call. No more avoiding all words not meant for me. Do I know what to say? Stand by, get in the way. If I throw fear aside, will you meet me halfway?
I think if you look at younger drummers than yourself, or just young drummers such as yourself, Matt, etc. I've been, I guess, playing now for 26, 27 years, something like that. And when I would go to clinics, like Pasic Drum Convention came through New Orleans, for instance, in like 91 or 92, and it was definitely all older players. And I think there's definitely a proliferation of younger players that are doing clinics and stuff like that, people such as yourself. Do you attribute that to, one, the sort of instantaneous access to information and videos and influence and everything that the internet could potentially be bringing, which for, when I was growing up, that wasn't a thing, and or do you attribute to I feel like a lot of the drummers that can really sort of ascend the ranks, so to speak, of like something like a drum off like you participated in, a lot seem to come from like church backgrounds. So what do you attribute the sort of higher numbers of younger players sort of doing clinics and stuff like that to?
Interesting. I think there's a few factors. One, I think, and this is my read on it.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I've been around a few less years than you, but
My liver's probably old enough to be your dad.
Okay,
I don't know that I
great.
am, but I think my liver is.
Great. But clinic seems to have really kind of become much more of a fad in recent years. Right there
Yes.
with drum camps.
Yes.
Right. I mean, 10 years ago, I don't think there were, 20 drum camps a year you could attend.
Yeah.
And yeah, so definitely social media plays a huge role.
Yeah.
Because I would, and this, I haven't thought this through, so I'm just spitballing here, but I imagine, right, pre-internet, social media, YouTube, the only way for anyone to know who you were was to just by association with huge acts. I mean, all the famous drummers pre-YouTube were just associated with whoever.
Yes.
Right? So you had to actually be a famous person playing with other famous people in order for a mass audience to know who you were.
Sure.
And now we've just got a different thing. And I would say that's the reason that it's an option for younger people or people like me who aren't attached to a credential per se.
But the skill level of younger players is higher than it was when I was a kid. So I do know that access to that the skill level is certainly higher. I'm old enough to have seen it change.
I see.
So
and as it should be. And this is now is an interesting time because I feel like, and this is, I don't have an answer for this, but I was thinking about this recently, that what it would be like to be 16 today, which is 10 years younger than I am now. 11 years younger than I am. But you've got everything at your fingertips, but a lot of people struggle to figure out what it is they should be doing.
Sure.
And it's scary because you can sound like a lot of people. But developing your own style becomes less becomes more confusing because you can watch 100 drummers
Yeah.
that are better than you play in an hour, and all of them are probably doing things that you wish you could do.
Sure.
So you end up either not knowing what to do or kind of skipping around from thing to thing and becoming sort of average at everything. And you can imagine that if you were allowed YouTube for 5 minutes and then it turned off for a month, you could no longer watch any video. You'd probably develop a more unique voice that way than having access to all the stuff all the time. Because you can't help but imitate what you've seen recently because it's just in your head, right? And some people can very actively make that something new and cool and make it their own style. But I think the majority of people will end up replicating it in some way or another.
Sure.
So that alone time and that time off of the video inspiration trail is really, really important.
I could see that.
And the other part of this that I don't know the effects of is there's obviously a ton of online education now.
Yeah.
And so little of it stresses, at least from what I see, I could be wrong, but so little of it stresses creativity or gives assignments that force you to be creative or gives you tools for how to be creative. And that's really the only reason I play drums. Right. The gigs are awesome. I love them. It's a huge part of the joy of my life and my income and everything. But at the end of the day, if I could never perform again, I do think I would still go just play by myself.
Yeah.
And some people find it really weird that I never, ever play along to music.
Yeah.
So I'm rarely to a click either. I want to go sit down and play drums, and I think I'm to a point, at least personally, where I think I'm making music that I like on the drums. And I hate sitting on YouTube. I never look. I don't know any drummers. You've already seen that. I don't know what's going on in the drum world, to be honest. And that's how I thrive.
Right.
Cut off from the rest of everything, because when I see things, I'm so tempted to imitate them, and I just end up sounding like the thing. And the way that I am now, if I end up sounding like someone, it's pretty much by accident. And like, it's funny because that happens as a drummer. You've got videos online and people will be like, ooh, it looks like JP's been getting into Mark Juliana. Right. Which is funny because Mark's a person that lives not far from here, and I took a lesson with once, and we just talked the whole time. We didn't even play. A person I really respect and would like to model my career after, but musically, he's kind of totally irrelevant. Like, I don't play jazz, I don't do beat music stuff, but like, and I haven't. This is what's funny too. It sounds like I'm like, justifying my playing here, but it's just true, and it's funny because I haven't watched. I listened to his album a little. I haven't watched any. I never watched YouTube ever. I haven't seen him play hardly at all. But it's just funny then because people are like, you're sounding like Mark Juliana. It's like, but that's actually a coincidence right now.
Right.
And I've gotten the same thing with various other drummers over the years. Especially ones who are so like, have like sort of claimed a style so characteristic. Yeah. Where as soon as you play a Chris Dave group, you're like, it must be really
Jojo
Chris
Mayer,
Dave.
sure.
Dude, Jojo Mayer, Chris Dave, Mark Juliana, a little Benny Grubb, I think. There's some Benny Grubb. But yeah, I mean, you see it in people. I saw a drummer play the other day, and I was like, this guy's watched a lot of Garska videos.
Really? I bet.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, in the case of Animals as Leaders, the same way Meshuggah spawned an entire, subgenre in djent music or whatever, so has Animals as Leaders spawned what feels like, I mean, most of them are instrumental, but there are plenty that aren't instrumental, but then they've then incorporated that sound as well. So there are so many bands that I see that sound like Animals as Leaders now. Right. Yeah. It drives me crazy, man.
Yeah, man. That's one of the, I mean, that's always like a sort of weird, sad feeling I have when I see a drummer play. You could apply this to a band too, but a drummer play that is so obviously into another drummer that they are just sounding like a worse version of them.
Right.
And this could be me. They could, I'm saying this about someone, right? And they could have never seen that drummer.
Sure.
But just let's say I'm right. Like, that's such a like bummer feeling because like it's such a weird territory because on one hand, like everyone who tries to do Animals as Leaders is going to do it worse.
Right.
There's no fucking way they're not going to do it worse.
Right.
So there has to be some branch off.
Something.
Right? You have to learn, and then at some point, it's the same with drumming. Given any topic, any inspiration, any drummer you're looking up to, at some point you have to take what is happening, what you're listening to, and branch off and say, hopefully it's a natural thing. I hope you don't have to say, wow, I sound just like this band. I need to like play and drop C instead of D.
Sure.
But it's like, hopefully it's sort of natural and you're doing this stuff and you're getting into it. And then you think, oh man, what if I like took it here? What if I applied it to 6/8? What if I took, Animals as Leaders ideas and did it with acoustic jazz instruments, whatever it might be. I don't know. But like, there's got to be a branch off, because that is a hopeless battle, that one.
Right.
And that's why it's a little weird. Sometimes I go to, like, I've taught some lessons pick anywhere in the world, actually. I've taught some lessons I was in Turkey teaching a lesson to a kid in someone's house, and they had like Benny Grebb's drum set, cymbal setup, looked like Benny Grebb when he played, sounded like Benny Grebb when he played. And I was like, that's awesome. That it's super flattering for Benny.
They say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. That's the phrase.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you're gonna copy somebody, Benny's a guy to do it. But it's like my challenge as a teacher to push him somewhere new.
I don't like that as an excuse or that as a phrase to sort of justify not branching out and trying to find your own voice.
Yeah,
That's kind of a little obnoxious.
Your personal goal shouldn't be to be flattering of someone else. It should be to
just as a
find
life
flattery,
a life mantra, just outside of even drumming. Just I would say that's probably a good call.
And actually, this is like a broad fucking brush I'm painting with here, but it's so what we're talking about with YouTube and not YouTube does not help people critically think on the drum set and think, what could I do next? What new idea could I try? Whatever it is, right? Because you've got the ideas. The ideas are there. You just have to learn them. Yeah. I just need to learn more ideas, and then I'll be able to combine them all, which isn't how it works. But it's sort of reflective of, and I can only speak for America, my fellow Americans here. But I think that's what our education system and a lot of people that I run into and speak to suffer from as well, is that in the age of so much information, you don't even have time to critically think.
Right.
It's just one.
It's easier to just bombard yourself.
You just bump around on 30 news apps and kind of half read the headlines and never take a moment to like consider, how does this affect my life? How do I feel about this? Instead of just taking in what you're given, taking what you're given and say, do I like that? Do I agree with that? Surely there are other ideas. Maybe I do some research. It's like, even just the easiest way to learn I've found recently is just you read things.
Right.
Whenever there's something referenced that you don't know, you go fucking look it up. And that leads to something else you don't know. And it just is this never-ending web of whatever. I've been reading a lot of Christopher Hitchens lately, and
he's an interesting guy.
Totally. A controversial figure.
Oh, yeah.
But brilliant writer. You can't deny that. And one of my friends summed it up perfectly. She said that her father said to read Christopher Hitchens, you need to be sitting with his book, a dictionary, and an encyclopedia, because every sentence is a pause. And that's really the way that it would be so much more wise to study the drums or music in general or life, whatever it is you do. Yeah. Is to take the time and think, this small tool because there are small building blocks that make up all of drumming. And it's just rearranging them and playing them at different tempos and different times with different limbs. And people think there's just a billion patterns they need to know, but it is so much more that there are a few patterns that need to be applied everywhere. Right. And with that, you learn to do everything you need. It's like you can say a lot with simple words. At the end of the day, the big vocabulary words are just kind of showy or like for a very specific reason, but they're not essential.
Right. Yeah. Interesting, man. I think I mentioned it earlier, and I guess we'll touch on it for a second. So many of the drummers that I guess go through even like the Guitar Center drum offs and stuff like that seem as though that a lot of them come from like church backgrounds. Did you come from a church background at all? Like playing in the church?
If you could just see me playing the music in my church, you'd be like, you would laugh.
So it wasn't Shredsville. It wasn't Gospel Chops necessarily at your church.
Oh no, I went to because I was brought up very Christian, and the church I went to was like a super tiny Episcopalian church with like a very small choir singing like more classical style things. And when I did we had like every few months like a contemporary Sunday. and I would bring in my drum set and play very quietly, like some boom,
Gotcha.
And that was like every 3 months. So no, I didn't play in church.
It wasn't a group of
and I was
gospel
certainly
chops
never
shredding.
exposed to the gospel chop scene. I actually didn't recognize that phrase until I was at Berkeley.
I bet.
So I was, and even before Berkeley, as I am now, I was just never into like the YouTube world.
Right.
So I just knew of nothing, basically. I
Yeah.
was just messing around with Mike Portnoy and Dave Weckl and Chick Corea Electric Band got a match. And whatever I could get my hands on, playing a lot of big band stuff.
Really?
Yeah, I actually missed that, but I was doing a lot of that random stuff. But I digress. I don't even know where we started that question.
I was just curious because I was just curious if maybe you two came from a church background where shredding was a thing, and if that was something...
And evidence of that, if you watch Berkeley Chops Volume 1, don't. But if you did, you can watch it for everyone else. But it was like one of the nicer things that someone did for me at school, and it's also like one of the things I look back on very like grimacy, because Garska organized Berkeley Chops Volume 1, and it's an awesome project because there's all sorts of features, like singer features, guitar features at Berkeley. There's no drum thing. So he did that.
Oh, interesting.
Just solo, which was really cool. His own project. Him and Jan Hunter Jr. Jan wrote the tracks. Some great drummers doing that. But like I said, I arrived at Berkeley. Chops wasn't a thing in my life, especially like anything like gospel chops or linear drumming, period.
Right.
So I was at my second semester, the beginning of my second semester, and Matt was like, hey man, like I'm making this DVD, like do you want to be part of it? Because me and Matt would practice across the hall from each other all the time in the dorms because we lived across the hall from each other. Very inspiring for me. He was a year ahead of me. But I was like, yeah, sure, cool. And then just realized how out of my league I was.
Oh man.
Especially at that time. And still, like chops of that type really are, they don't come naturally to me.
Yeah.
And
well, once again, you didn't grow up in the church seeing it and experiencing it firsthand and trying to emulate some of those licks and stuff.
Totally.
Whereas,
the vocab's not there
Right.
for me. And even though I've made a concerted effort at periods in my life to better that vocab, it's gotten better, but it so doesn't sound right. When I hear me do it,
I think
I'm
that's
like,
a good
that's
thing.
not the right thing.
Well, maybe it sounds like you, and maybe that's a good thing.
Who knows? Yeah, my lack of abilities is my strength here. I'll take it.
That's hilarious, man.
Right now this means a bit to me, so now I'm trying to speak with Sweetie who been hitting it to me. If you alive during the Renaissance, around during the peak, there be paintings of you hanging in museums as you speak. Now hold on. Hold on. But for now, I'm patiently waiting to go again. Now hold on. Hold on. But for now, I'm patiently waiting to go again. Now hold on.
So, one question about the drum off, and you also did was it the V drum competition as well?
That is correct,
You won that as well?
I won the United States one, and
national-
they actually held an international one after that.
Wow.
And I took second to,
Wow.
to Norway. Bard Kolstad took the gold.
That's amazing. And what was the time frame from winning the Guitar Center drum off to the V drum thing?
That was actually awesome because the international contest, NAMM is like an excuse for companies to hold events. So
Yes.
they were like a week apart.
Oh, wow.
So I was preparing for the drum off and the international V drums contest simultaneously.
Damn, dude.
So it was literally my whole day. I had dropped out of college and went home for like winter break was approaching, and I was like, I am going to practice so much. So
Holy shit.
I went home in beginning of December, probably, maybe even earlier. I don't remember. And I had this sick kit. I have a picture somewhere of like I had my acoustic set up on one side in my old drum room back in my parents' house in Minnesota, with the like octapad on the left. And then I would flip around Neil Peart style and have my whole electric kit with the sample pad and the octapad.
Sick.
And it was, I would just wake up and practice on my acoustic kit till it got late and then switch to the electronic kit.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you did that for how long? Like a winter, basically?
No, I mean like a month straight. But I mean, mind you, I'd been practicing a lot while I was still in Boston.
Right.
I kind of set like a strict 4-hour-a-day thing.
Yeah.
Which is, and this all plays into why I dropped out of school. But at the end of the day, because that was my priority one at that point. So
Yeah.
like I was like finals were approaching, And I was like, still like, okay, well, I need to do my midterms. And they're like big projects or like composition and stuff.
Yeah.
Mind you, I'm generally a good student, but at that point I was like, this is what I need to spend my time doing. And
Right.
then it was. And I thought I might be dropping out of school anyways because I long story, but I didn't know what else I wanted to study there. There was way more to learn.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like I'm an average musician at best. But it just didn't seem like I was going to use a lot of those skills.
Absolutely.
And I have thus far not used many of those skills. Maybe if I had the skills, I'd use them. But yeah, it ended up working out like that.
That's sick. Was there any particular sort of, light bulb that went off in your sort of ironing out the solos that you would play in both of those contests that you still feel like you might even apply to today?
Light bulb moment. If I reflect on what made the difference, man, I wish I would have won the international thing because that would have just been a fucking clean sweep.
Goddamn right.
I'm just like, dude, I don't even, it's like not even that I care about winning it. It's just like that would have been,
It would have been sweet to say it.
just crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if it was rigged and I thought I sucked, but I still won, I'd be like, dude,
Fuck
I'll
it.
take it.
Take it.
Whatever. I reminisce on that whenever it's brought up. But anyways, there were a little different approaches to the two things. The electric drums, and this is, I mean, if anyone out there owns a sample pad, an octapad, anything that requires you reading a manual,
Yeah.
just read the manual. Like, read every page, sit with your machine, figure out how it works, because most people utilize about 5% of the capabilities of whatever they have.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's a synth, electronic drums, a sample pad, whatever. And that was what made much of the difference for me, is that,
Interesting.
especially at the international level of the drum-off, the V drums contest, they took off all the restrictions on, like, you had to use stock sounds. So you could I had my friends, sick musicians, like make me tracks basically.
Sick.
And I could assign those to drums. I could assign those to the sampling pad.
Yeah.
So funny enough, at the time, and for years after, the Roland V Drums International Contest was actually one of the like performances I was most proud of. Because if you watch it, you wouldn't know watching it, but nothing in it except the animal sounds. Nothing in it was a stock sound.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, no one else in the contest did anything
Even
like
bothered
that.
to do that.
So I had like my friend Amon record like this sick metal stuff that I was playing to. Those were not default tracks. There's this thing where one of my friends, who's an incredible singer, Lainey Lynx, she sang this beautiful melody, and I had like guitar chords going on the drums that I'd assigned. I remember being extremely proud of that because it was more of a composition than a drum thing.
Yes.
And then I did a little show-offy stuff, but it was more like I did like a 7/8 clave with the left foot, something like that. So it was like kind of like a technical show-off moment, but I really loved that thing. And I was actually like legitimately bummed when I didn't win. Because with the drum off, the Guitar Center drum off, I was like, dude, at the end of it, I was like, this is anyone's game. I don't even know if I should win. Like,
Right.
I was like, if I lose, I will expect to lose. You know what I mean? But with that one, I was like, man, I thought this was really cool. But anyways, so yeah, I digress. One piece of advice, if you've got gear, learn how to use it. And the other thing was just putting in way more time than anyone else.
Right.
And trying to, again, think critically and be like, I'm doing this drum solo competition, right? What is it really?
Mm-hmm.
It's a composition competition. Because you see it, I mean, when you see people play in the videos, various Guitar Center drum off videos, everyone's got chops. There's so much crazy stuff going on.
Not much of a story to it often, not much of a narrative, not
Right,
very dynamic.
And oftentimes when someone has some kind of contour to it and movement in whatever direction, it just automatically feels good. You feel at ease watching it. Mm-hmm. And one thing I remember learning as I was thinking about the drum off and practicing was that, actually it was probably after when I was doing my first clinics, was that people listening are basically going to feel what you feel. Mm-hmm. So if you are kind of like, you've got half a plan, you're blowing chops, but you're kind of like, you get to points, and you always see it in the audience where like, did they plan this? Like, do they know what they're doing next? Mm-hmm. And then they do something and you're like, I still don't know if they know what they're doing next.
Right.
And And it's a really uneasy feeling. Like and that's what's so crazy about live performance is there is this tension as a viewer that things could go off the rails at any moment. I think that when I see my girlfriend has been a professional dancer for years, and watching especially live dance performance, you're like, man, like just one little slip, trip, like this shit could fall apart right now. You know what I mean? And it's all together and it's choreographed, and it never does usually, and it's incredible. But that's just a feeling that you want to not give your audience. And it comes from having some kind of idea of where it's going. Because flubbing a fill, not that embarrassing to watch, right? That's kind of normal. Everyone flubs fills. But getting to 4 minutes out of 5 and like running out of ideas and kind of just like being somewhat obviously lost is really painful to watch, you know, regardless of the player. So because it's weird with big competitions like that where there is so much luck required in winning. I mean, at the end of the day, like I didn't make the decision to win. You know what I mean? And as something that sparked my career so enormously, there is a little bit of this weird feeling of like, did I deserve that? Like all this kind of doubt feelings. The other guys were better drummers. I still see them. And I'm like, Fred Boswell competed the year I did. I'm like, dude, you can shed my head off any day of the week with one arm. So there's this weird sort of thing you carry with you. And I some type of humility that everyone has. And the only like solace I really take from it is that it doesn't really, I don't care if I was the best drummer. I know for a fact in speaking with, you know, other competitors that I prepared way more than anyone, like hundreds of hours more.
It's orchestration.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that's the other thing. So having some kind of contour and just preparing for things that matter. I remember thinking at the end of it, I don't care if I win. I just want to feel like I couldn't have done more.
Right.
So whether I had won or lost, I would have been happy.
Yeah.
You know, because it was literally just the best thing I could do at the time.
Sure.
And I knew it.
Right.
So yeah, that's it.
Interesting, man.
Also, you know, the drum off is done.
Is it?
It's no more.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
I don't really
That's the general vibe, but yeah. Most people don't know that. So
I did not
anyone
know
who
that.
is banking on their career to win the drum off,
Right.
alternate paths will have to be
Utilize. Yeah. Oh shit.
for the good of everyone.
Yeah, I think
Not
so.
that it's not a thing, but I've met too many people who were like, man, I just need to win the drum off, then it's all going to line up. I was like, dude, that is not in your hands.
Right.
You could be the greatest drummer in the world. It's still not in your hands.
No.
You know what I mean?
No, so many variables. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So that's the good part I'm talking about.
Right.
But bless the drum. The people that run it are incredible.
Sure.
It's a cool event.
Yeah.
Regardless of what people think about the performances.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously you won it. There's been no shortage of great drummers that have won it. I think some of their paths, as we were mentioning briefly, have gone maybe in different directions. I think it's interesting that, I think that why not? Why, in your case, why not go play with Lady Gaga or take a gig that may be, let's say, a little less artistically fulfilling, but instead you're doing your own project, Childish Japes. We can talk about that. I think it's an interesting project for you because for such a young player, I think you have a pretty strong sense of dynamic playing. And it seems like that project is good for you. And I dig just the chemistry between the three of you guys. And obviously you work with different vocalists and whatnot, but it seems like it's a really cool project. And so, yeah, tell me a little bit about this band.
Cool. I'm enjoying implying to your listeners that I'm declining calls from Lady Gaga and Justin Timberlake to do my artistic passion project.
That's right.
Let's make that a reality for everyone. But Childish Japes is just my favorite thing ever, and it's a really special project. And it's really important for me to explain what it is to people.
You want me to give a shot of what my perspective is of it?
No. Yeah, I'm just gonna tell him.
All right, let's hear it.
Actually, tell me because I'm curious how it's coming across. That is helpful.
I'm gonna say just more or less technically. I'm not gonna have like this all-encompassing.
Okay, then let me go.
Okay,
Sorry
go for it.
to shut you down. This is what's important about Childish Japes. Childish Japes is not. It's never going to be a normal band. It's going to keep. morphing and changing, and every album is going to be completely different than the last. Stylistically, genre-wise, who we feature is going to change. It's literally a safe space for us to try all the things that don't fit anywhere else that we really want to do. So it is a band of 3 people, me, Asher, and Jed, and we are all very, I will speak immodestly momentarily, we are all very diverse players. So we can do a lot of different things. We have a lot of different interests. And it is a place where all those ideas are A-okay, and everyone sounds exactly like them, right? So it's the reason Childish Japes for me was absolutely mandatory to start. And the way it started is a whole nother story and a fantastic sort of coincidence. But it's the fact was that I didn't have I've been in great bands that I love with people I love and music that I'm very proud of. But had someone asked me, what do you do? There was no musical embodiment that I could point them to and be like, that's me, you know? And as a drummer, I'm in a weird place, like you mentioned in the YouTube age, where I don't have credentials. Right. I am just a dude that people are following, and I don't know why. Right. So there's no name I'm attached to, and even the ones I'm attached to now, like Generation X, and I can name drop Steve Vai. Right. And I've subbed with Periphery, but I'm not in those bands. A. Yeah. And B, that's not really what I do. Right. If you listen to Childish Japes thinking I'm like Matt Halpern, you're in for a huge surprise. Yeah. So it is the purest form of me doing me, Asher doing Asher, and Jed doing Jed. And that's one part of it. The other thing is that it's meant as a fan. What we want to create is a relationship that requires energy, actually, which is exactly the opposite of what you'd think is a good idea. Because we're going to put albums out that do challenge people, and you're not going to like them all. We don't care, right? So in my opinion, I'm not even a fan of Frank Zappa's music hugely, but as a person, he's incredible, and he's very inspiring because he put out tons of music.
He's the most prolific, probably, musician, I think, in the history.
Yeah, and he put out totally different random stuff. Oh, yeah. And no one likes everything he's done.
No, it's crazy, yeah.
That's exactly, I mean... Maybe you like everything we've done, but it's far less weird than Frank Zappa's. But yeah, that's the idea: is that we want fans who are in this for the long run, in the sense that when we put something out, they're not expecting like a modern version of the last album. It's like no, actually, like the second album's a rock album that sounds kind of like Radiohead meets Jeff Buckley. The second album's a trio album that sounds like Knee Body and Bad Plus, and the third album's a hip hop heavily produced album. Yeah, like that's more the path we're going down, and we want people who for whom music is a hobby and something like music enthusiasts who are willing to give it a chance and love it and dig into it to be like real fans. And that's what's so weird about this is I'm the band manager kind of. Yeah. Well, yeah, I am. Sure. And our first album, like some of the songs got some great, play counts for whatever that's worth, and like people are listening to it. And conversation has come up, and we've been in contact with some people. It's like, well, do we push this to labels? Do we get PR? Right. And it's like, what if I was working at a label, right? And I gave them what I just said, and be like, that's the worst promotional idea ever. So you've got a band that's always changing and is always doing weird stuff, and might at any given moment just put out like a free jazz album for the hell of it. You know what I mean? And it's just like, who's going to push that? Like what does that team look like? And I don't yet know. If anyone's got ideas, feel free to connect me because my network is tiny. Yeah. But it's weird because we're almost like we just have to grow a niche cult following. It's our only option because no label is going to want to deal with us, and we don't really want to deal with them. Yeah. And if someone like finds the band and loves us and wants to like be on board for the real message, cool. But like if someone loves one of the things we do and wants that to be the thing we become, it'll never work. Right. That would ruin the entire point of the band. Yeah. So that's what Childish Japes is, and I'm extremely excited about it.
Yeah. I think you have reason to be. Your answer, as it should be, is far more in depth than my very simple, objective perspective of it, which is simply that three proficient players that have a really good chemistry and all kind of, there's this melodic, rhythmic, sort of ambient interplay between the three of you that I think works really well. And the genre itself, or whatever it is that you're going for in that particular track or album, can change, but I think that is the consistency is in that.
That's cool. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of like, as I'm thinking about it now, is like Childish Japes would be the type of project that if I was not in it, I would dig.
Yeah.
Because if you ask me what I'm listening to lately, it's like it's a lot of not new stuff, but like one new thing is like Marlon Crafts, this kind of like underground rapper in New York that just put out an EP. And like I'm still hooked on the last John Mayer album,
Really?
St. Vincent,
Yeah.
just like jazz stuff here and there, the Bad Plus. It's so random that like it's okay for me if a band does something totally different.
Sure.
Because that's what I'm listening to. And in this day and age, I believe there are a lot of people like me. When you have Spotify, you have every album that's ever been written at your fingertips who just listens to rock.
Yeah.
Who just, and they're out there, and they probably won't like Childish Japes. But I think the majority of people would really value a personal connection and a more challenging connection with one of their favorite bands, let's say. And so we're experimenting with a lot of stuff, and we're launching part of the experiment here is we're going to be launching a Patreon. Are you familiar? That's going to be, it's a weird thing because it's so weird to ask for money from people.
Yeah. Feels a little bit like panhandling, but if the intentions are good and they know it is, then people feel better about funding something they'd ultimately like to see come to fruition.
Yeah. And what is exciting for me, I've actually like, I've just like accepted that it's weird to ask for money.
Yeah.
But I've started supporting a few things, podcasts and such that and the feeling you get from doing it is good. It's incredible. You're like, even if I don't listen to every podcast, I'm supporting something I believe in, and without me, it wouldn't work. But what I'm more excited about is for the subscribers, it basically is going to be like the ultimate VIP package, which sounds like I'm trying to sell it to fans, but it's kind of like selling it. Like I'm excited for us. Like because we have jam tapes, like we film and record everything. And it's always like, I'm always like, this stuff is really fucking cool, but we're not gonna like release it.
Right.
Like just to have the core fan base be like a group that we can like, dude, we're jamming this stuff out. It'll never see the light of day, but like, check it out. Just to have even 50 people who are like stoked about that is very exciting to us, because what we do is create a lot of music and most of it doesn't ever see the light of day.
Right.
So I'm very curious to see how it goes.
So am I.
Yeah, we'll see. We have a somewhat modest goal in the beginning, but anything helps. It's like we just want the band to cost less money at this point.
I hear you.
It won't be like a salary, you know?
Right, exactly. Fucking A. Well,
Yeah.
What else do you have going on in 2018, man?
2018 for Childish Japes is 2 more albums probably.
Okay.
We're releasing one. We're sending one to mastering. That is so cool.
All right.
Really excited about it. We're sending that to mastering. It'll come out in May.
Nice.
We're hoping to put out a trio album in the fall.
Cool.
Yeah, probably fall. If the world just worked the way I wanted it to, we'd put out a 3rd album featuring a rapper by Christmas.
Okay.
But don't hold your breath on that one.
Okay.
Everything happens at half speed.
Set your goals high, brother.
Dude, that's the only way. So that's the Childish Japes front. We're actually, the other part of that is we're trying to really focus on good video content.
Okay.
I got this incredible hookup at the YouTube Space, which is a film studio in New York. For those of you there are film studios around big cities around the world, and creators on YouTube with a certain number of subscribers are just able to use the space for 1 day or 3 days or 6 days, depending on how many subscribers you have. And I'm in the lowest tier, but to be out in New York City, the impossible thing to find is space that you can afford.
Yeah.
So to be able to just go into a black box or any other studio and rent free gear, the camera gear is free, and just film stuff is just indispensable. So every month we are filming a cool video, whether it's a music video, a performance video, a drum solo, anything. Because that is the best thing we can give our fans right now, because we can't tour.
Right.
It would be, we just throw tens of thousands of dollars away. And we don't have enough fans concentrated in one area. Like,
exactly.
It's really encouraging to see people consistently listening to the music. Like, or is some form of budding fan base out there, but it is obviously spread so thinly around the world that like we could have one person per show maybe show up. You know what I mean? But maybe there's 10,000 of you out there. I don't know.
Right.
But so that's our main focus is good video content, putting out good music, and not wasting time like trying to just milk stuff.
Right.
So many bands, they put out like 4 songs, they like talk about it for a year.
Yeah.
It's like we want to put out an album, and then by the time another band is just like starting to milk it, we
Yeah.
put out another album.
Right.
That's the goal.
High output.
Exactly. And not worrying about it being perfect, it just being real and authentic. So that's the Childish Japes plan. On the drum front for JP, couple trips. I'm doing 2 drum camps in New York City that are already sold out. Sorry, everyone. But that's going to be awesome because I've been wanting to do some in New York.
That's super cool.
It's just an exciting city to visit. So I try to make my camps destinations whenever I can. And in this case, we'll finish camp at like 5, and then we'll like get some great food. Food culture here is awesome. And then go see a show or see a jam or like, there's countless places you can pay a $10 cover charge and just go watch like some of the best jazz cats play.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about those. I'm going to China for 10 days. In case there's any Chinese listeners out there, which is not.
I've been working on my Chinese.
Do you know your Chinese demographic?
Let's just say it's lots.
Well,
I mean, there's a 1.5 billion
Great,
or 5,
great.
6, 7 billion. So a few here or there.
Great. Well, that's why I'm going. No, I'm going to do some clinics in China in April. And currently being organized is something I'm really excited about. Not to downplay the China trip. I've been there like 3 times in the last year. But this thing I'm very excited about is the South Africa trip. So a drum festival there is going to be great. I don't know what it's called yet, but it's going to be great. And maybe the SA Drum Festival. But a couple clinics, and hopefully, if all pans out how I want it to, 3 drum camps at like safari game reserves.
Whoa.
So like lodges that are, you take a drive out into the jungle and see lions and tigers and bears.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have bears down
No.
there. They don't have tigers down there either, do they?
So, no.
They have lions and giraffes and zebras and things, though.
Yeah, there we go.
So on game reserves, so we'll each, we'll share like maybe 2 people to a lodge, and then we'll have like a communal lodge where we have a drum set and some chairs, and we have drum camp normally.
Yeah.
And then we are in the middle of the jungle after that.
That's
and
badass.
Maybe go on some drives to see some ostriches and things run around. And that I'm very excited about. It's
That's
also
killer.
It's a country that I've read a lot about recently and went to once when I was dating a girl from there, but that was 8 years ago, and I'm just jonesing to go back and experience the culture more deeply.
Sounds badass.
Yeah, very excited about that. Other than that, what do we got going on? Filming some videos with Meinl later in the year. Not sure if I'm supposed to talk about that.
Okay.
But it's going to be cool.
It's coming around the bend.
Yeah, this fall.
No shortage of content, both online in general and, of course, at your website.
Yes, I have a website. Quick plug. It's great.
Lots of lessons.
Yeah. I'm revisiting, which hopefully some listeners are excited about. I've kind of fallen off the map on YouTube for the last 2 years. And I'm making a concerted effort this year to restart that engine and put good content there. I'm going to be posting some Ask Me Anythings, drum stuff, Childish Japes stuff, all sorts of stuff. So I don't think I'm missing anything that's in the books yet, except another Generation X tour this November. That's basically my year.
Okay.
And I'm going biking around the perimeter of Iceland.
That's going to be super awesome.
If anyone listening to this podcast lives anywhere near the Ring Road in Iceland, shoot me an email at jpbouvetmusic@gmail.com, because I will happily exchange a night of drum lessons. I'll be traveling with the guitarist from Periphery, and we will just hang and teach whatever you want in exchange for a warm meal.
Okay.
And I am dead serious.
Okay, yeah.
It's a 3-week trip around the perimeter, and we would love to see as many Icelandic people as possible.
That's going to be incredible.
I agree. Very excited.
Fucking A.
Just got a new bike.
Time to put in some miles on that bad boy.
Oh yeah.
Right on. Well, shit, JP, I think we just about covered everything other than, maybe childhood trauma and anything else. So I think the listeners should be good at this point.
Yeah, that's the kind of good stuff you get on my website.
Oh, sweet. For childhood trauma, go to his website. You heard it here, folks. Right on, JP. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And many thanks to JP for being such an inspiring young cat. The future seems a little brighter knowing that someone like him will be leading the way, if you know what I'm saying. Check out Childish Japes as well. What a killer band. What a dynamic band. And I look forward to wherever they decide to go and whatever directions they decide to lead us. I'm along for the ride. I'm into it. Links in the description. You will find those. And keep your eyes open for drum camps, clinics, and the like. All right, JP. All right, y'all. The listeners. Catch y'all on the next one. Crash, bang, boom.
Where do we go from here? So she got started.